During her career, Earhart clocked up a long list of incredible achievements, like becoming the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean and setting a world record for altitude in 1931, where she flew at 18,415 feet. Her highly anticipated circumnavigation of the globe, planned for the summer of 1937, was reportedly going to be her last big aviation stunt, with claims that she had plans to stop flying. As we know, it was her last flight, but not in the way anybody wanted it to be. The now infamous trip actually wasn't Earhart's first attempt at flying around the world, though. That came 3 months before her disappearance in March 1937, when she set off in a team of 4. Noonan was there this time as well, but the pair were also accompanied by another pilot, Paul Mantz, and another navigator, Harry Manning, who was the best radio operator of them all. Notably, perhaps fatefully, it's thought Earhart and Noonan weren't so good with radios. This first attempt was supposed to see the team travel from east to west around the globe, but they ran into early difficulty during just the second leg from Hawaii to Howland Island in the Pacific Ocean. The attempt was swiftly abandoned, and Earhart and Noonan parted ways with Mantz and Manning. The second attempt, though, was when things really went wrong. But not straight away. With Earhart and Noonan deciding to go it alone, they headed in the opposite direction, this time flying from west to east, successfully completing their first leg across the US from Oakland to Miami. From there, they executed successful flight after successful flight, making various planned stop-offs across the Atlantic Ocean, Africa, and Asia before landing in Lae, Papua New Guinea on June 29th, a month after they first set off. At a time when long-distance flying was still in its infancy, Earhart's journey to that point was truly a groundbreaking one, and she and Noonan now had just 3 flights left to finish their round-the-world trip. One from Lae to Howland Island, one from there to Hawaii, and then one from there back to California. They were just days away from home then, when tragedy struck. They did depart for Howland Island, but they never arrived, vanishing forever somewhere over the Pacific. The circumstances surrounding Earhart's disappearance, though, are more than a little weird, and the mystery regarding her fate is still debated today. A crucial aspect to the story is how generally unreliable the communications between Earhart's plane and a supporting US Coast Guard ship, the Itasca, apparently were. The Itasca was fitted with plenty of comms equipment, but transmissions between it and Earhart were reportedly scarce, delayed, or even non-existent. In the days immediately after the disappearance, and in the years since, there emerged conflicting reports on exactly what was and wasn't radioed through. Earhart's plane, a Lockheed Electra, may have had some communications failures, while it's thought that the Itasca wasn't successfully radioing back to the flight either. One line of argument, though, says that the plane might have reached its destination had there been a dedicated radio operator on board, someone like Harry Manning, the guy who had accompanied Earhart on her first around-the-world attempt. Radio problems or not, the content of some transmissions has been more widely reported than others. It's said that Earhart mentioned running low on fuel multiple times, for example, and also that in her last message, received at 8:43 a.m. on July 2nd, she was noticeably panicked. Amidst the confusion in those crucial final hours, it's thought that the crew at Howland Island were at one time extremely confident that Earhart was nearby, so much so that they were literally scanning the skies outside. But her plane never appeared on the horizon, and when she failed to show, a search effort was swiftly launched by the Coast Guard and Navy, scouring the surrounding ocean. Famously, though, that search was a failure. It included multiple US ships and cost around $250,000 a day, about $4.4 million in today's money, but yielded nothing. No sign of Earhart, Noonan, or their plane. There are plenty of theories as to what happened to them, but the most common, and arguably most plausible, is that Earhart's plane ran out of fuel, crashed into the sea, and the pair died. Weather records indicate that Earhart did encounter much stronger than expected headwinds during her final flight, which could well have slowed the plane, potentially causing navigation issues and eventually draining the tank of fuel. Significantly, though, the wreckage of Earhart's plane was never found, prompting other explanations wherein the pilot and her navigator actually survived. One of the most popular Earhart theories says that she and Noonan did manage to land, just not on Howland Island as was intended, but on the Marshall Islands around 800 miles away instead. In most versions of this story, Earhart and Noonan were then captured by Imperial Japan. In some versions of the story, though, they were sent into Japanese territory on purpose, as both were really working as US spies. Either way, theories tend to split into 2 camps as to what happened next. Some say that Earhart and Noonan were promptly executed by their captors. Others think that they lived on the Marshall Islands for the duration of World War II. before eventually returning to the United States and living out the rest of their lives under new identities. Remember, though, that Earhart's plane went down in 1937, 2 years before war broke out and more than 4 years before the attack on Pearl Harbor. The dates aren't a perfect fit for the capture theory. Plus, there aren't any Japanese naval records that Earhart, Noonan, and the Japanese forces ever crossed paths. But this idea still captures attention. In 2017, for example, a photograph emerged allegedly showing Earhart and Noonan at a dock on the Marshall Islands, seemingly safe and well. The photo was ultimately debunked, however, when another researcher found it had been published elsewhere in 1935, 2 years before the disappearance. But the Marshall Islands aren't the only proposed final destination for Earhart and Noonan. Another theory argues that they actually found their way to Niku, another island in the Pacific, then known as Gardner Island. It's said that at least one of Earhart's patchy transmissions reported a flight path which did fly over Gardner Island, and also that there were some transmissions that could have been from her traced to this tiny coral atoll. It's thought Earhart would have had enough fuel to reach this makeshift landing spot, and interestingly, human bones were found there in 1940, as well as paraphernalia that may have come from Earhart's plane. Upon discovery, though, the bones were analyzed and determined to have most likely come from a shorter-than-average man of European descent, so not Earhart or Noonan. Frustratingly, the bones were then lost, so despite later suggestions that they could just as easily have been from a woman of above-average height, which Earhart was, nothing has been definitively proven. Niku was searched in the days immediately after Earhart's disappearance too, by a squadron of US planes flying over it, while modern searches of the surrounding waters have also found nothing. If she and Noonan did wind up as castaways on Gardner Island, then it's thought they perished there, seemingly again without a trace. It's a riddle which remains unsolved then, largely because of two significant aspects to it: the unreliable communications record and the miles and miles and miles of ocean beneath which Earhart's plane might today lay. Just because we haven't found the Electra yet doesn't mean that it isn't there. It took more than 70 years to locate the wreckage of the Titanic after all, and that was a far bigger vessel found thanks in part to the accounts given by survivors of the disaster. In comparison, Earhart's plane was small, and there are precious few leads to work from. We've now been searching for it for more than 8 decades, but technology is always improving, and perhaps one day we'll be able to map the seafloor so extensively that many wrecks, including Earhart's Electra, will finally be put to rest. But until then, the theories still abound, because what if her doomed flight was actually an untold story of survival? And what if she and Noonan weren't lost to the Pacific? Low on fuel, battling the elements, and struggling to communicate with the Coast Guard, it is more likely than not that Earhart crashed and her plane sank to the bottom of the sea. But her fate remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of all time. And that's what happened to Amelia Earhart.